Numerous reports indicate that manufacturing has emerged as the favorite target of ransomware groups and hackers. In response, a new report from Industrial Media discusses the evolution of industrial cybersecurity, its current state, and the tactics hackers are using, including phishing schemes, malware, and ransomware attacks. It also details solutions in arming manufacturers with the knowledge and resources needed to win more fights on this highly complex and ultra-competitive battlefield. Download the industrial sector's new battlefield by going to manufacturing.net/cyber. Hi, I'm Jeff Ranke, Editorial Director of Manufacturing.net and Manufacturing Business Technology. Welcome to Security Breach. As most in our audience know, one cybersecurity topic that gets me up on the soapbox quicker than most is the need for stakeholders within the industrial sector to collaborate and share more information on cyber attacks, hacker tactics, and best practices for both warding off intrusions and understanding how to respond to them. The need is obvious, so I'll spare you the plethora of statistics supporting the growth in attacks targeting OT networks and how these behaviors have synced with an ever-increasing attack surface thanks to a little thing called the Industrial Internet of Things. Well, thankfully, more local, national, and international organizations are growing in notoriety and impact to help keep me off the soapbox and, more importantly, address these evolving concerns. Today, we welcome representatives from the Industry IoT Consortium to discuss their recently updated Industry Internet of Things security framework, which offers broad industry consensus on securing the IIoT environment as IC attacks continue to escalate and ransomware attacks drain billions of dollars from the industrial sector. It's my pleasure to introduce Marcellus Buchheit, Bassam Zarkut, and Kale Kaindek from the Industrial IoT Consortium. Marcellus, Bassam, and Kale, thanks for joining us today, and welcome to Security Breach. First of all, Marcellus, Bassam, Kale, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Security Breach.
Glad to be here.
Excellent. So, Kale, maybe we'll start through the first question your way here. Talk to us a little bit about what is the IoT Consortium. What are you guys focused on? Tell us a little bit about the organization and some of the work you've been doing.
Great. Yes, the Industry IoT Consortium is a group that has been helping the industrial sector to really accelerate their adoption of IoT technologies, and really advance a lot of the digital transformation projects that drive a lot of the productivity improvement in the industrial sector. The organization has focused on creating different working groups that help in different areas, whether it's by specific industry or in communications, and in our case, security. So the group that you have here today really are specialists on the security side for the IIC.
So, Bassam, I'll throw this one your way. Have there been any specific segments that you've seen that have really either played a bigger part in constructing and contributing to the consortium's work, or maybe somebody that you had in mind specifically that really kind of fueled the need for the organization?
Yeah, over the years, the consortium has progressed with the progression of the IoT space. Initially, people were concerned more about the plumbing side, the system side, and then things evolved into, and this is the area where I focus on in the consortium, which is the area of digital transformation. And now we're starting to tackle sustainability and higher level functions. And throughout all of that journey, security has been at the heart of it, whether we're talking about the plumbing side, whether you're talking about digital transformation or the higher level functionality. I've also been involved on the artificial intelligence side within the consortium activity, and it has an angle into the security subject that we're going to discuss today.
Okay, perfect. We've talked a lot about some sort of generalizations with the consortium. Marcellus, I would think from the time the consortium was started until now, there's been an evolution in terms of the priorities and the goals that have been set. What have you seen as far as the changes that have been needed for the organization to sort of tackle and get after?
Yeah, when the ISC started, it was around 2014, I guess, and I was member from not super begin on, but relatively early, since 2015. In this time, IoT was a big hype, so companies just tended the IRC to stay around this topic, not missing important things. And it takes over the time, changes. Today, I think IoT is mostly mainstream. I think not all problems are solved with security, for example, but people have a good idea what it is, and it doesn't change so much anymore. So I would say the hype is a little gone, and now it's more the substantial work is coming. And what the IRC is doing right now is bringing more specific industries, vertical industries in the group, discussing specific challenges they have. It's obviously that, everyone has security issues, but when you ask people from the oil industry about security issues on the oil rig, it's different from a mining industry having this on an ore mine, and this different again from security you have on a hospital, but this is all IoT, yeah. And so we try to listen more to the verticals and see how we can specifically help them.
Interesting. Marcelo, sticking with you, I'd kind of be interested to get your take. What have been some of the things that have really pushed cybersecurity more to the forefront? We've seen over the last couple of years there's a lot more attention paid to it. Obviously, that has something to do with the fact that there's been a lot more attacks on OT and on the OT environment. But have there been other factors that have you seen really elevated the significance when it comes to a lot of the different stakeholders that you're working with?
Yeah, that's correct. Security is an ongoing challenge. So like I would say, like education or something. Yeah, everyone knows what it is. Everyone knows it's very important to get addressed, and we still fail in many things. Yeah, because there's too many players around. In principle, I would arguing that when you install the latest security technology well in your system and maintain it well and administer and operate it well, it's practically on the level you expect it. But the most people don't even install it well, then they neglect it even further with not going with updates and not really understanding what's going on. Then they're neglecting access rights and a lot of things. So it's a really challenge, and this is independent of IT and OT. So in the IT world, I guess we get the most challenges when people say my password get hacked, I lost my credit cards. Yeah, that's all the IT world, and the OT is just different affected. The challenge of OT is that we have a lot of brownfield where old systems have old security.
I would also say, with regard to what's driving these continued demand for cybersecurity and importance of it. There are three big things from my perspective. One are the attacks. The attacks are much more frequent and much more sophisticated. The industrial sector just overtook the financial sector as the most attacked industry for the first time. Second, compliance. Compliance is a big driver. There's a lot happening from demands from the White House, the executive orders, and other regulations being or requirements being put in place from the OMB, specifically around zero trust, and but also with CMMC and IEC 62443. There are many. The EPA also just released other requirements. So there's a lot driving the industrial sector to improve its security. And I would say, thirdly, cybersecurity is just more complex now. There are 3,000 plus security vendors out there, and that complexity is confusing to people. So they need more guidance on how to approach things without considering the specific vendor solutions, but really looking at security from a wider angle.
At the same time, the emergence of more and more powerful artificial intelligence engines are forcing organizations to reconsider their life cycle strategy for data and thinking, well, maybe I should keep this data, but the longer I keep it, the higher the cybersecurity risk as well. So there is that challenge and that dynamic that's playing out, and we don't know which way it's going to go. But these are raising the stakes for everybody.
Yeah, Bassam, I definitely want to circle back and talk a little bit more about AI. Before we go there, Kale, I want to circle back to something you said about the number of vendors and sort of the proliferation of potential solutions that have grown out of the fact that there is more awareness, there have been more attacks in terms of from a cybersecurity perspective. With all of those options out there, is it muddying the waters too much? Is it becoming too confusing? Is it positive to have this many options out there? Because kind of what Marcellus was talking before about how diverse the industrial sector is. Maybe we need more specialized solutions. I'd kind of be interested to get your take there in terms of what does all of these potential vendors mean? Does that make it better or a little bit worse?
It's confusing to say the least. I always think of security operators as belts and suspenders people. They if there's an opportunity, they're going to wear their belt and a pair of suspenders. And the security industry is kind of like that in that there is no silver bullet, and people like to double or triple up on things to make sure there are many different layers of security. I don't see the number of solutions shrinking. I think there are just too many scenarios that require very specialized solutions because security and how it's implemented today broadly is so imperfect. So companies tend to look for what will work and what will add on to their current implementation.
Absolutely. We know the attack surface is evolving. We know the hackers are evolving. It's good to know that our solutions are doing the same way. And I think the more options we have, as you guys have kind of mentioned, I think that's a positive development, especially when we've got organizations like yours that are putting together frameworks and guidelines for us to help us bring together and form some common ground. So, Kale, I'd like maybe start with you, and you can talk to us a little bit about the latest version of the Industrial Internet Security Framework that the IIoT Consortium has put together. Talk to us a little bit about what the new upgrades mean, maybe some of the different elements that were involved in constructing them and putting them together.
Sure. Yeah, the Industry IoT Security Framework, or what we call the IISF, was recently updated. It was first written in 2016, published then, and we just updated it. There was so much to add, and I'll talk through a couple of highlights, and then I can hand it over to my colleagues who were very critical in the process of updating it. But one of the things was we just modernized it. So there were many concepts that weren't as clear back in 2016 that we improved, specifically treating things like the cloud and containers. We went a lot deeper into endpoint security and communication security. We also significantly improved the treatment of configuration management and security management. So within the IISF itself, we frame a lot of what we're doing in the context of trustworthiness. So in the industrial sector, things like security, safety, reliability, resilience, privacy, all are really important. When they think about security or building a trustworthy system, we need to take all of these into account. And Marcellus was part of the team that really built out a lot of the thinking around trustworthiness. The IISF framework builds around many different sections. So we go into things like endpoint protection, communications, monitoring and analysis, configuration and management, data protection, and then of course looking at a model and policy. So it's a very comprehensive view, and we also try to reference as much as possible for context other types of security guidance that's out there as well. I would say the final thing that we worked on in the document was ensuring that the IISF as a framework flowed right into the IIC security maturity model, which is a more practical guide to help organizations assess their own level of security for their OT and IoT environment.
And Jeff, the audience should not think that we are dissing the first version of the ISF. It was a very comprehensive document.
Yeah.
But it's a reflection of how far this industry has evolved. That when we sat down to initially we thought we would produce version 1.1 of that framework, we realized that there's so much new ground that we had to cover, and we've spent a significant amount of time doing that, and eventually this became version 2 of the framework. So it's simply a reflection of how far and how fast this domain has evolved.
No, I think it's a positive. Anytime we see these frameworks being updated, it's definitely a step forward. It's a good thing. The industrial sector, sometimes I don't want to say we put our head in the sand, but we don't want to deal with some of these cybersecurity concerns because it slows down production, it throws kinks in the supply chain, all of that. So anytime we can get these things updated to show the evolving elements of cybersecurity, that's a positive. So I agree with you 100%, Bassam. So, Marcellus, I'd like to circle back to you a little bit. In working with all these different stakeholders, and you said you guys developed a consensus for the framework. I cannot even imagine how challenging that must have been with all of the different input that you were receiving. Maybe you could talk a little bit about managing all of that feedback, managing all of the stakeholders, and really developing a framework that makes everybody happy.
Yeah, it was, you're right. When we had this version 1 done, we was really happy it was finished. And then we did not edit a new version for a while. Practically, I think we after 2 or 3 years, we said we need a new version. And then people came to us, you have to add that, you have to change this. And the first thing is, it's not a security framework. It's a IoT security framework. That's a huge difference. So there's so many security well known in IT, we have not to repeat that. So we have, of course, explained the IoT leaders who come from the OT world and not the big expert, what basic security methodologies or architectures mean, but we don't want to go in any details for that. So we really focused on devices, on networking, on monitoring and management, as long it fits the IT/OT world, and the rest we kept out. Then we have more challenges we probably address in future versions, like zero trust, which is so new that we still don't know 100% how we align this in this document. But it will be sure in the future, it will be probably follow in each chapter will follow such a new guideline because it makes sense. So it's a document, I think you never finished writing it. And finally, you have then the challenge and say, okay, let's make a cut here and just fix things or complete things or be sure that there is no contradictions in the paper and in the text, and then publish it. And finally, we did that this year.
Now, you can definitely see how this could be a paralysis by analysis type of situation and just having to cut it off at some point.
It's interesting because a lot of the document, there's general agreement and new ideas, and you can build and weave those ideas in. And then there are certain paragraphs that just become the sticklers. And, everyone in the group, they're very detail oriented and contribute a ton. And it's important. It was important not to just quickly get through those but to really talk them through and make sure we got it right. So it was an incredible process to go through.
And we parked quite a few subjects for a future version of that framework. And this dilemma between, do I keep the data or do I get rid of it because of liability and so on, this is something we will have to deal with in the next version, because it's going to become a major issue.
Well, I think that's key too. When you look at one of the biggest issues right now in cybersecurity from the industrial perspective is there's a skills gap. There's a huge need for people who understand this topic and can have an impact on it. But there's not a lot of folks that are ready to either step into the role because they are trained in it, they have a knowledge of it, or an enterprise even has the resources to dedicate towards a cybersecurity specialist. So if you've got somebody who's handling additional responsibilities, having this type of document that is simplified to make the workflow and the framework easier to understand, easier to digest and implement, that's a huge win.
Jeff, there's always that this is new, so what I know doesn't apply here. No, this is not true. If I'm a security professional, most of what I know will apply here. There's something that is new, but we describe it from the perspective of I'm a security professional, I have my skill set, I have my knowledge, and now I need to adapt that knowledge and skill set to this emerging world, which is the IT/OT environment. So we try to address it from that perspective.
You know, Marcellus, it's been interesting. You've been bringing up a lot of correlations between IT and OT and developing the framework and working with different stakeholders. One of the things that we've seen in manufacturing here in the U.S. is because we don't have enough OT operational security specialists. We might be running pretty lean. It might be just difficult to get those folks in the factory or on the plant floor. There's a cut and paste almost happening from IT procedures to OT security procedures, and that creates a lot of issues. I'd kind of like to get your take in terms of the short-term ramifications, the long-term impacts, and maybe how the framework that you guys have put together can help address some of those things that are well-intended but really can take you down the wrong path.
So there was actually a topic of a security conference I was attending a couple of years ago, and there was people from large companies like Rockwell Automation and talk about exact this topic. So the first good news is at least the bigger serious companies, they not distinguish regarding security between IT and OT. They say we have between IT and OT one consistent security model. So it's not that we weaker on the OT side because we need real time or something. So that's good news. It's also a good news that what at least they said is when you hire someone, security expert with a master in computer science from university, they know what OT is. So that's huge different from 10 years ago where people came from the IT and said, oh, I didn't never expect safety issues. I don't even know what it is, or reliability or resilience. So that changed. And so we hope that the RISF will also be used in education, at least as a reference. So students can learn a little more the challenges from the OT side and are well prepared when they start their first job. And they said, I cannot just listen to the IT people who works here for 20 years, because they don't really know what OT security means. I will bring in my knowledge from my education. So that's also, I think, an impact to all people who educate security in the universities today, integrate OT challenges in that and not just educate IT security.
No, great point. You know, as we've discussed, I mean, there's a serious skills gap, training gap, whatever you want to call it right now in the industrial sector. And, you know, Kayla, I'll start with you. We know there's no silver bullet. If there was, we'd have it out there and everybody have this problem solved. But have you seen different things that maybe have been put forward or best practices or suggestions that can be made in terms of helping to address some of this skills gap that we're experiencing right now from a cybersecurity perspective specific to the industrial sector?
I mean, this is where I think the IIC Security Maturity Framework is a great place to start. A lot of the frameworks that are out there or maturity models have been built more for IT environments and general security applied to enterprise networks. And our SMM goes into great detail to evaluate the security flaws within a specific industrial context. So it's going to go into a lot of general areas, but the methodologies and the line of questioning is very comprehensive with regard to IT and OT and IoT environments. The second thing is that we've also begun to expand that maturity model with specific and additional questions that have to do with either a specific sector, like we were talking about earlier, like mining, and certain other frameworks like IEC 62443. So you can bolt a lot of different questions onto the SMM to have a very complete view. And so I think that is one thing that organizations really need to do. They need to take stock of what they have, because while I have seen a lot of large enterprises and industrial companies have very robust security policies and standards, they their policies and standards are much less secure on the or complete and comprehensive on the industrial side. So that's where the SMM comes in.
Makes sense. Bassam, I'll start with you, kind of wrapping things up here, guys. This has been fantastic. Really like to get some feedback. Is there a specific issue or a trend that you see could really be impacting very significantly cybersecurity within the industrial sector? I don't know, maybe over the next year, 18 months. Bassam, maybe we can start with you on that one.
I would say AI.
Yeah.
AI is going to be exploding in generative AI in the industrial world, and there has to be a concerted effort to understand the new risks that are introduced by the use of AI, and how do you mitigate them and how do you address them. And as these internal oracles are built inside organizations where you have a generative AI looking at everything within the organization, you have to protect that oracle, not the company, the oracle, AI-driven oracle within the company, because that's going to be driving or assisting in driving a lot of the processes within the organizations, including the OT side as well. So I think that is going to emerge as a very important and hot area to consider.
Yeah, and hopefully embracing a lot of things that AI brings to the table, not just dreading it and fearing it, but really accepting
it's coming, and it's good. It has lots of benefits, but you need to do it responsibly, and you need to understand the risks.
Marcellus, what about from your perspective? Any trends that we should be aware of?
Yeah, I think zero trust will be a major standard in the IT world, and it will be hopefully simplify some discussions in the OT world. You say, look, with zero trust, we cannot follow that procedures, how we did it in the past. So I think that will change a lot. I think the rest is, like I said before, OT is a mainstream. So we will go to new technologies. We will probably using more 5G than in the past. And with 5G, I don't mean a public 5G. I mean even a private 5G. So you have your local 5G, like your Wi-Fi network. And 5G is more real-time behavior, like Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi 6 will be helped this again. So there is a lot of new technologies coming around. But this is so what everyone learned. In the IT world, every 3 years you have to replace everything. Your server is 5 years old. Well, that's a real problem. While OT, they said stuff from the 50s still working well. There is no reason to change it. So I think the OT will be follow up more what's in the cycles of the IT world in modernizing things. Probably shut down whole production lines or some other operational equipment just to replace it with a new one, and not try to keep the old alive because the security risk is too high. The reliability is not addressed anymore. Safety standards cannot be fulfilled. So I think we're running in a faster world in the OT than in the past.
KL, what about you?
I think we're still waiting for the big black swan event. Some large cyber physical event to really push the industry. While there are a lot of compliance standards and guidance and requirements, most of those don't have a lot of teeth, and companies tend to do what they need to do to meet some of those requirements, but not everything that they need to do to truly secure and make sure everything is safe and completely locked down from a supply all the way down into the supply chain. And I think we're still waiting for that. We've had many attacks on industrial systems around the world. We've had attacks on ransomware and large phishing attacks that have impacted the industrial sector. But we haven't had a very large, comprehensive cyber physical attack, say, on across the United States. And I think that we see some hints of that and other activity in that area. But I think it's going to take some larger event for for things to move beyond, to really push companies in the direction of deepening their security commitments.
No, you're not the first to offer that up. And, we've heard people talk too about it is going to take that huge event. We've also heard people say one of the things that really has sort of fueled a lot of investment in cybersecurity tools and strategies has been the fact that the CEO or the board had to go to a meeting or a quarterly report and talk about paying a ransomware. So when you're faced with those types of, it's not even a huge external humiliation, but internally having to justify why something happened and why there's less on the spreadsheet, that's helped fuel some investment too, which is unfortunate.
With our ransomware, the risk that people publishing your data or selling your data or whatever.
Yeah.
So this is beyond this ransom cost, and you don't even know after you pay your ransom that this data is destroyed. You have no guarantee for that. So I mean, there should be enough warning, taking all this serious, and no, it's not just. And embarrassing is this? It is unpredictable what could happen in the future with the company.
Guys, this has been fantastic. Love learning more about the consortium and the work that you've been doing, the framework. It's all the things that we've been talking about here in terms of the industry coming together, sharing information, and putting out solutions. Great hearing from you all today. Before we take off, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I mean, number one, just thank you for the opportunity. We're excited that the IISF is out there and ready for companies to take advantage of. And I think it's a great way for security professionals and OT security administrators to just get their heads around the different topics that are important. It can be very daunting to try to understand that from the vendor viewpoint. And this gives you a framework that is not tied to any specific standard, but is very comprehensive.
Don't limit your attention to systems and securing systems. You are going to be accumulating massive amounts of data that you have to manage its security and its value for a very long time.
Marcellus, Bassam, and Kale, thanks so much for joining us today. To learn more about the work the IIC is doing, you can check them out at iiconsortium.org. Thanks for joining us today, and to catch up on past episodes, you can go to manufacturing.net, IEN.com, or mbtmag.com. You can also check Security Breach out wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple, Amazon, and Overcast. If you have a cybersecurity story or topic that you'd like to have us explore on Security Breach, you can reach me at jeff@IEN.com. For Marcellus Bukait, Bassam Zarkut, and K.L. Kaindek, I'm Jeff Reinke, and this is Security Breach.